Yo, what is going on, everyone? Rissa here with Culture Fuzz, aka Rissa SoFar. Thank you so much for joining me back here on another episode of the Culture Fuzz podcast. I hope everyone is having an amazing week so far, and I just wanted to bridge the gap to another conversation, you guys. So on this episode, I'm sitting down with Fresco, who you might remember him from a couple of episodes I've done with him in the past, but I'm also joined by the beautiful, brilliant, and funny Steph, who is helping to facilitate another intricate and sensitive conversation around microaggressions, what that means, what that looks like, and how we can bridge the gap to potentially developing a better conversation around it. But before I go ahead and put on the conversation with them, I wanted to give a special shout out to a couple of companies who reached out to me to get me to try their product and give them a review. So really quick, I wanted to shout out first and foremost Lady Lane Lip and Beauty. She sent me a lipstick. She hit me up in my inbox and she's like, I want you to pick a lipstick. I want you to do a review. And I'm like, I'm gonna do better than that. I'm gonna shout you out on my podcast. And this is a Black owned company, which I'm really excited about. I really want to, be more conscious in the companies that I'm shopping with, and Black owned is where my focus is at right now. So this is the packaging and the lipstick that she sent me, matte liquid lipstick in the color Naked. So I'm a huge fan of nudes, like nudes, earth tones. And then it says Lady Lane on it. The branding is everything, sis. And then you guys, if you're listening, definitely head over to the YouTube channel so you can kind of see. So I want to do a swatch and I want to do a test. I have a feeling this is going to be a beautiful, beautiful lipstick color, but I have to remember this is a podcast and not my YouTube beauty review channel. And I also want to give the second company I want to give a shout out to, another one who popped up in my DMs and wanted me to try out their product, is by Black Park Skincare, another Black owned company. I'm all about skincare this year, hunty. Like, I adopted a new skincare routine. I couldn't be happier. Skincare is everything, y'all. So when they reached out to me and I was like, hey, y'all are Black owned, oh my God. So it was a very heavy box. So if you're listening, you guys, head over to the YouTube channel. This is the box that they sent me. Branding, again, is everything. They sent me like candles, body scrub. Let me see. So they sent me candles, fall vibes, notes of cinnamon, cloves, tobacco, and vanilla. You guys, so heavenly, so heavenly. It is so good. So shout out to Black Park Skincare and also a shout out to Lady Lane Lip and Beauty. I will leave links to their website as well as their social media down in the description box below of wherever you're listening. And without further ado, you guys, here is the conversation. Oh, really fast. And I really want to talk about, I really, really appreciate these two reaching out and just offering to send me products, because I cannot tell you how many times I'll have brands, quote unquote, I'm giving the air quotes, brands reach out to me saying that they want me to be an ambassador, you know what I'm saying? And then charge me. They're like, yeah, you can get 60% off everything off of our site, or you have to pay for shipping. I'm going to tell everyone listening and watching right now, if you are trying to be an influencer, if you are looking to be an ambassador, companies send you stuff for free. You should not have to pay anything. This goes back to like back in the day when you're taking acting classes and stuff like that. When an agency hires you, you do not have to pay. So the same thing with brands and companies. Like, if they really want to work with you, if they really want to utilize your following that you worked really hard to gain, all the networking and the relationships that you created, these companies are looking at your profile for that very reason. So absolutely, you should not be charged anything outside of the gate. Nothing should be coming out of your pocket. I don't care how good they make the deal sound. I don't care if it's $1. You should not have to pay. So shout out to both of these companies that were very professional and did what they said that they were going to do. And on top of that, these are quality products, y'all. So I love to see it. I had to highlight them, and I will be doing a further in-depth review on my YouTube channel for these products. And if there are any other companies out there that are listening, please DM me, find me on social media, send me an email. I do want to work with you, and I want to help bridge the gap to people, places, products, and ideas. And if you have a product, hit me up. So on that note, guys, here is the conversation with Steph and Fresco.
Steph and Fresco, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
For having me and her and us, I guess.
And all of us, all of the things. So I was just explaining to my listeners, I was doing the little intro before hopping on with you guys. Fresco, you've been on the show before, a familiar face, but I'm super, super excited to be introducing my girl, Steph. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How are you guys?
So I'm phenomenal. Super excited to have you guys on. And I just want to give a shout out to the universe and the perfect alignment and Fresco for bridging the gap to Stephanie, because Fresco got a little bit of a fan club through the Culture Fuzz. So we had a guest come on, and she was super, super sweet. She was listening to our last conversation, and she posed a question where she wanted us to facilitate a conversation around microaggression, specifically microaggressions around race. So she further then asked us to specifically bring on a guest that was Caucasian. She's like, I want to hear it from a guest who is Caucasian. And I was like, I feel where you're coming from, but I feel we can do a whole lot better with this conversation. So when we got Steph on the show, when I was speaking to her, it was like perfect alignment, because not only is she not Caucasian, but you're Italian, right? You were telling me you're Italian?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's Italian, but I mean, as you guys can see, like, she has that European Caucasian look that you would associate with it. So having her experience while also having that, like, having the outer look of, like, blonde hair, all of that stuff that you wouldn't necessarily associate with minority groups and stuff like that. I was like, you got to be on. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you've got to be on. There's so many intersections to your life experiences. Like, we all have such different intersections to our experiences that I know we've experienced levels of microaggressions. Like today, like, I definitely experienced and I think projected microaggressions towards someone unintentionally. It was more like a survival thing, but like, I'll definitely jump into that.
I'm so happy you said that, but yeah, no, please continue.
So
we'll touch that again.
So today's discussion, we're going to be diving into microaggressions and what that means. So before I read off the dictionary term of what it is defined as, I would love to know, Steph and Fresco. Steph, you can go first. What do you define as a microaggression?
So a microaggression it's kind of hard. There's like a fine line, because we all have great senses of humor. Obviously, after having conversation, and I come from a very sarcastic background. We're very sarcastic. We crack jokes on each other. We rip each other to shreds, and those kind of things are similar to microaggression. But I think where it comes down to it is knowing your audience, and also if there is aggression behind it. If it's said as more of a backhanded compliment in a way. Because at first when Fresco had told me about it, I'm like, what is microaggression? Like, do you like, what does it actually mean? And then I was reading about it, and I'm like, this is complex, because I come from a background of so much sarcasm, where, like, if I gained a couple pounds, they're calling me fat. If I lost a couple, they're asking me if I'm a crackhead. So they don't mean it. So I'm like, wait, is that kind of microaggression or sarcasm? So I think it's knowing the audience, and I think it's kind of that judgment and stigma towards a race or a group of people with aggression tied to it. I think it's something that has that underlying, like, I'm not this way, but I'm going to say it like a backhanded compliment.
I feel you. Totally makes sense. Fresco.
Yeah. It's funny because I looked it up before we got on the show, and I was like, I was gonna petition to just read it, but and I didn't read it. So we're gonna go off the cuff on this one. No, it's really, to me, it's just a subconscious attack on a person without necessarily realizing that you're doing it. And I do think it has a lot to do with preconceived notions that the majority of the time come from a place of, I think I used this word already, from a prejudice that has not yet been processed or acknowledged. And I say necessarily because I think that there are people who, as Steph said, do backhandedly make comments, and that is also a microaggression. But I just wanted to draw attention as well to when it may not necessarily be a conscious act.
Right. Yeah. And that was super interesting. So both y'all are brilliant. Both y'all hit it on the head. It's essentially what it is. Like, and I thought that there was like a standalone definition of a microaggression that didn't have to do with race. Like, I thought it was like an umbrella, and I was like, oh, maybe there's microaggressions against race and relationship. Yeah. No, but it's literally like an unintentional, like you were saying, Fresco, almost unconscious discrimination against members of marginalized groups, such as racial or ethnic minority. And I was like, that's very specific. So I almost wonder if the word was developed around the consciousness of marginalized groups. Like I want to almost jump into, like, once I read it, I was like, I've dealt with so many microaggressions. Like, oh my God, like that identifies this one time when she said this. So as people who've grown up, in such diverse and multicultural environments, I would love to hear some of the experiences. Now, understanding what this is, what you guys could identify as microaggressions you've experienced.
Today was actually kind of interesting because I feel like today happened specifically for this conversation. And it was actually a microaggression that I was projecting outward and I had never realized. It never really dawned on me. So a marginalized group can also encompass the elderly. And so this was happening double time for me. My grandma was over, and her way of showing affection is she likes to clean and cook. And because we've got this whole renovation going on, she wanted to come over, cook and clean, right? So we're talking about her past, where she owns a business. She does cleaning for wealthy people, and she targeted a particular audience, and she knew what she was getting into and how she was going to approach it. In the past, and I literally realized this today, I never noticed that I did this. I always, like, if people asked about my grandma or what she did, I always said that she cleaned houses. But I never realized that I could have said that she's an entrepreneur. And so to me, that's a microaggression because I perceived her as being a house cleaner as less than it couldn't even be considered an entrepreneur. So I've always perceived her that way. And I had to kind of take a minute and be like, yo, what the fuck was that about, bro? Like, like, I love Abuelita. That's my girl, yo. And like, it never dawned on me. So I wanted to use that example because it happened. And I was like, wow, like, microaggressions can be even towards people that you love, people that you care about. I mean, this is my grandma who literally has taken care of me since I was like a baby, like took me everywhere. Like, I love this woman to death, and I still held this perception in my mind up until today at 31. So that's 31 years of this I never noticed.
Can I ask was it you reading about what a microaggression is that helped kind of turn the light on or bridge that gap to that? Like, what made you what turned the light bulb on?
I think it was because I knew we were going to have this discussion and I had it on my mind. So when we were talking about her work in the past with her clientele and how her journey from Costa Rica here and deciding to do that, as well as, you know what it was? Her father in Costa Rica was like a director of a flight airline or some sort. So he had a really high position job. And so she was talking about how she's always liked nice things. And so I think it was kind of like all of that sort of context of nice things, high paying jobs, and then her telling me her story about being an entrepreneur, but not using that word. I was like, wait, you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Why did I never look at you that way? Why did I never perceive it that way?
That's real. I want to come back to that and unpack that, because I'll be like, did you unpack that? Did you try to figure out like why not? But we're going to come back to that step. Can you identify a couple of moments or a moment that you either projected the microaggression or were on the receiving end of it?
So there's so many instances, but I do want to touch on one moment that I witnessed a microaggression, and I was bartending down south, and we were bartending during a bike week, and there was, as you can imagine, lots of racial slurs being thrown around from different races, some towards their own race and some towards others. And this girl that I was bartending with had made a comment. I don't actually remember what the comment was, but she made a comment and it triggered me nonetheless. And I, simply said to her, like, what are you doing? Like, do you even understand what you're saying right now? And I kind of called her out on it. And it was just me being who I was and just kind of saying to her, how can you say that when you're so off? Basically, she marginalized a group of people. And she didn't even realize she was doing it. And we exchanged words, and I just went about my day. Recently, I would say about 7 months ago, when there was a lot of stuff going on in the media, she reached out to me and she said to me, I just want to thank you for that day that we exchanged those words. I actually didn't know that what I was saying or doing was being racist. And she wasn't just saying it was a microaggression. It wasn't like she said something that was totally, like directly. So she apologized to me and she said, I was brought up that way, so I didn't realize I was doing it. It was kind of unintentional, as Fresco said. It's not always an intentional thing. It was very unintentional for her. And not to say that it was innocent, but there was a naivety about it. She didn't really know what she was saying. And because of that exchange, she texted me and thanked me for it and said that now she has really, looked inside herself to figure out those boundaries and those lines that she has crossed in the past. And now she is an advocate for, standing up for those things. At the time she sent me the message, she said, I don't quite have the courage yet, so please, if you post anything about this, don't put my name out there, but one day I will. And now I see her on social media platforms, exchanging the same kind of words I've had with her with other people. So it was kind of refreshing to know that not everybody really understands what they're doing, and having an uncomfortable conversation sometimes can change somebody's life.
Absolutely. And these are like very, very difficult conversations, because not everyone has the self-awareness or the wherewithal or even the space to hold a conversation like that in a loving way, to where you're not offending anyone or making them feel bad. And I appreciate minds like yours, because it's taking yourself out of yourself to try to understand. It's like, okay, well, are you really choosing to be this way, or do you just not know? Which is a lot of what I'm finding, to be honest, is that just people are not aware. And I'm super grateful that we're tapping into this. I'm super grateful. I forgot the woman's name who asked us to talk about this, but I really, really appreciate you. I'll pop your name up on the screen. because it's something that I didn't realize that I needed to unpack for myself. And it's another word, another tool that I can use to identify experiences and help bring the message across. Like, there's a name to these moments that I experience. Like, there's one that has burned in my head. It's so small, but it literally, like, it's stuck with me for so long. Like, one of my really good friends, she's an event planner, and we were in one of like her bougie clients, like big old mansion, and we were like sitting at the dining table. I was helping her with centerpieces, and you know, this was like back in the day, and we're talking about manifesting, and like, yeah, one day we're gonna do this. And I remember saying, I was like, yeah, when you go into your meetings, like, bring me with you, like, I'll help complement the deal, like, whatever, just playing around. And she said, and she like looked at me, and she was like, yeah, but you're gonna have to straighten your hair first. And I was like, I don't know how to react to that. So I'm going to stick that in my back pocket, because, like, I know you didn't mean it how you meant it. And it was one of those, like, you laugh it off, and it's like, do I, like, say something? Like, what?
Yeah.
And so, like, for years after, I was like, if there's ever a window, I'm totally going to bring it up. But it was like,
Here it is.
but I mean, I love her to death. I know where her heart was at, and I know how she meant it. And it made me think, how she probably didn't know. And like, when all of the BLM stuff was happening, the Black Lives Matter, and, you know, it brought a lot of this self-awareness to people. She was one of the first people to say, like, holy shit, I did not realize that even, you know, stuff that I thought was just completely innocent, like all of these jokes and stuff, like, was so out of line and so inappropriate. And I was like, maybe I don't need to have the conversation with her, you know? So it's one of those where I'm like, dang, like, is she a product of her environment? Like, which I truly believe, I think she really, really is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah.
Bottom line, I'm raising a child, and he has no idea the difference between, and he's mixed, and he doesn't know the difference yet between black and white. He just thinks we're all people, you know? So it is something that's totally taught to people, 1000%.
And Steph, when we were talking earlier, I was really like into the conversation when you were talking about, you know, with your son being mixed, he's half Italian, he's half African American, correct? And dealing with, you know, now these microaggressions that, you know, as a Black male, that he's going to inevitably face, and finding yourself in difficult situations is like, how do I bring up these types of conversations to him? Because he's at an age now where I'm sure he may not be able to identify, but he's like,
See, and that's the hard part, is because he is blue eyes, and he used to have blonde hair like mine, and now his hair is darker. But, you know, aesthetically, people may not necessarily look at him and say, oh, he's mixed. My biggest fear for him when we were living in a different area that was predominantly Caucasian was that he's going to be in high school one day, and he's going to be in a room with a couple kids, and they're going to be throwing around racial slurs and saying things, and I'm going to have to explain to him that the you know, that they're derogatory, that they're inappropriate, that they're hateful, that they're hurtful. And that was my biggest, like, one of my biggest fears with him. The other day we actually had the conversation, and I mentioned to him that his dad was Black, and he was like, no, he's not, Mom, he's tan. And so and I said to him, you know, you're Black also, Miles. And he was like, no, I'm just like a little bit tan, but that is. So he's at an age where, you know, I'm trying to explain things to him, but I also don't necessarily want him to have those, like, I don't want him to have to define it just yet, because I feel like that's where that stuff comes into play. And I feel like he's just so innocent right now that, you know, I have to have those conversations with him, because at the end of the day, it's my job to protect him and, you know, keep him aware of that kind of stuff, especially with everything going on in the world today. But it's, you know, one of my fears is that he's going to be, you know, in a place, and also he's going to have a hard time identifying when he's coming into his own. because aesthetically he's not going to look a certain way, but maybe that's how he connects and how he, you know, feels and how he belongs. So it's hard because I don't know, you know, what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's so many intersections. Like, there's so many intersections, and like, I mean, the way that the human mind works, we judge off of looks. Like initially, like we create this entire story and narrative off of this person based off of what they look. And Steph, I want to come back to you because I know with you being Italian and you growing up in the environment that you grew up, I know you got stories, girl.
I sure do.
But Fresco, like the conversation or the epiphany you were having and connecting the dots about your grandmother, and you were asking yourself, like, why did I not connect those dots initially? Why do you think that? Why do you think that our first thing was it's just we don't see it as a bigger picture?
Yeah, well, one, I definitely want to tap back into the survival comment that you made before, because that's a big one.
Should I share my story? Oh no, I shared my story of microaggression. I was like, I shared mine, right?
But you know, one of the things I said to her, and mind you, now that I'm talking about it, she had a microaggression indirectly towards me, like indirectly more so than what a microaggression already is. But with her, she's Spanish, and this kind of, you know, she's Latina, and so this part of the conversation came up that I thought was interesting, and I've had this conversation before. People who, like American or English, more particular in America, English-speaking people, when they have conversations with other people who don't speak English as their primary or first language, and it shows, that immediately sends a signal in those people's minds that the English as a secondary language person is less intelligent.
Yeah.
1000%.
Right.
I'm guilty of that shit too. I'd be lying if I didn't find myself, quote unquote, trying to dumb myself down, like, oh, he just doesn't, let me talk slower. It's so offensive.
Right. Yo, these people, and it's crazy because, like, you know, for example, what happened, if anybody's seen Scarface, you know, the whole movie is around Fidel Castro sending over Cubans, and not the desirable Cubans, to Miami, as opposed to the first Cuban wave, which was actually doctors and intellectuals. So it's interesting in that way because our country kind of has this history of doing it anyway, which, I mean, you know, big surprise there. But I didn't realize that I was capable of doing it. And the language barrier element was something that I had to negotiate a while ago. It was something that I already realized, but I'm still dealing, I guess, with the reverberation of it. You know, I know that I've kind of minimized her intelligence in my mind because of the language thing. I just didn't realize how until today, kind of a thing.
Wow.
Yeah, so I
created it
the bigger part.
A cleaning business rather than an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, because I never. When you look at somebody who cleans houses, and I'm just going to say this generally, but more specifically, when I did, I never I guess I separated that from being a viable business option. Like, I've never seen it as something that could genuinely, you know, rake in funds. But, you know, I remember there was this time where my grandma was talking about expanding, and the first thing that came to my mind was the Merry Maids van. So I don't know if in Cali they have Merry Maids, but
it's like a cleaning service.
Yeah. It's a franchise cleaning service. So I was seeing their vans everywhere, and I was like, you know, you're not that. You know, that was my first thought, is you're not that. How could you get there? You know, it wasn't completely pessimistic, but it was this sort of process of, but what would you need to do that? And it never dawned on me that Merry Maids could be owned by a minority. Merry Maids could be owned by somebody who speaks Spanish and English is their secondary language. None of that ever dawned on me. So it's kind of those things where, again, you're socialized to see a certain thing. Maybe, where I was brought up, it wasn't the most wealthy place. So anytime I saw Latino people doing things, it was from a kind of very blue collar perspective. It wasn't like CEOs and stuff. So yeah, today I made that kind of realization, like, hold up. The textbook definition of what she is not only an entrepreneur, but also a pioneer for coming to this country in the first place without any family here. Like, that's big shit. Like, that's huge.
Go off, abuelita. Go off.
Yeah, word up. Side note, I'll just say this just because it's funny. She hates when I do some adventurous shit, though. She's like, no, you stay home.
Just like a true Latina.
Don't leave the nest. Like, just stay right there. So just a little side note for humor. But yeah, that's what it is with abuelita. It's the whole vibe.
That's incredible. And go ahead, Steph. Go ahead.
It's funny that we're talking about this right now because at work, I'm actually interviewing cleaning companies. I have one and they're not really performing to the standard that I need. So I actually had some come in the other day to do some quotes for me. And it's funny because now that we're talking about this, the guy who came in was this corporate, one was a very corporate, he had his mask, said his company name, and he had his clipboard, and he was telling me all these selling points of his stuff. And he made it a point to say, all of our cleaners speak English, as if they didn't, it was going to make me not want them. And so I guess that is kind of a microaggression.
Like, you use that as a selling point?
Yes. And I looked at him and I actually mentioned to him, I said, well, that doesn't waver me either way. I said, I can speak both English and Spanish, so that's not a problem for me. But I found it interesting, and I kind of looked at him like, because to me, that's not a selling point. Like,
yeah. I even squinted, my brow furrowed. I'm like,
yeah, like, you actually had the nerve. Did you just say that out loud? Like, I'm thinking to him, like, and I made it a point to like kind of dismiss that comment to him and shut it down because I thought that it was offensive.
Absolutely.
I actually found that to be quite offensive that he actually said that as a selling point to me.
And it's crazy because I remember all of the corporate companies I've ever worked for. I was trained to put, if you want the cleaning people to take out the trash, write basura on it so they know that it's the trash. Like, we were like appreciative that they were doing this. If I have to expand my vocabulary and learn a new word to like communicate,
God forbid you got
oh my god,
vocabulary, right?
And it's interesting because I'm like, how it saddens me when I hear stuff like that because it's like how limiting. Like, that's such a limiting mindset. And it's like, think of how much further you can expand your business or how many more houses you can touch if you had a bilingual staff,
Right. And also, I did housekeeping at a hotel. So,
word.
Hello.
You're like, this ain't, I am not the one.
Yeah, not today. Not me. Because I was just like, he made it a direct point to say it. And I was just
right.
Well, I'm not here. I don't care if you have aliens that come in here and clean. I care about the cleanliness of the place.
You mean like green aliens?
Yeah, I mean,
oh my goodness, yeah, dude. Like, it's very interesting to like sit here and be like, that's a microaggression. Oh my god, that was a microaggression. Okay, so today, I'm identifying it as microaggressions, but I don't feel bad about it because, again, like, I felt like I was in a moment of survival. So I was sitting in the parking lot on my lunch. I was like sitting in the parking lot in front of a restaurant that I got my lunch at. I was just taking a 10-minute nap or whatever. And I had my chair leaned back, and all of a sudden I was woken up by the sound of like patrol cars, their dispatch radio, and like a bunch of cops being like, go, 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 go. And like their cars taking off. And I'm like, okay, all right. So, but there's this one patrol car that was still like left behind, and she was like frantically, the female cop was frantically going in and out of her car, and then I see her take this, I'm gonna say it, this black man out of the back seat, and he was cuffed, and she takes his handcuffs off, and she's like bangs on her hood like, go, go, go. And she gets in her car. She was like, leave now. And she like jets off. And I'm again just like peeking over, like I'm laid back, just peeking over like my like window, like what the fuck is happening? My nosy ass. And like and then all of a sudden, yeah, pretty much exactly. Like it's just like over my sunglasses, like. So the guy who was just in handcuffs, and he has this little like to-go tray, and he's like frantically walking towards my car, and I was like, no. And he's like, hey, cuz. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, he's like, do you think you could give me a ride? And I'm like, no. And I started locking my door, rolling up on my windows because they were all down so I could get the breeze. And he's like, I just need a ride. And I was like, I'm so sorry, sir. Like, I can't do it. I'm gonna send my prayers though. I'm sure someone here will help you. Like, trying to talk over him, not giving him a chance to tell his story. I don't want my heartstrings pulled. I don't want to be an accomplice. I don't want to be pulled into whatever. Like, you just had handcuffs on. So like, I know I was spewing microaggressions. Like, he called me cuz he was at a Chinese owned donut shop. He was just arrested. His pants were sagging. Like I was just like, my survival instincts are like, nah. It's very much like, and of course, like I thought about it, I was like, he could have very well needed help, and like, you know, like it looked like he was in trouble, but I was just like, as a woman by myself out here, I can't do it. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting how you pointed that out, Fresco. How, you know, like, are microaggressions necessary sometimes? In certain situations. And I know how fucked up that sounds. Like, I realize how crazy that sounds. And it's disappointing to be like, I sized you up. I sized up the situation, and it's a hard no for me based off of like my assumptions, not letting him tell his story. Because I'm like, what does this sound like to my boss, where I'm like, hey, so I'm not going to be in, I'm now an accomplice in like this whole situation. You know what I'm saying?
In your defense, there was police involved. So, you know, I mean, it was really probably not the best situation for you to enter. You know,
I'm saying, I was like, I feel you, bro. I get it. I am more than certain someone will help you, but
I'm also gonna head out.
I started my car. I'm like, I gotta go. I just wanted a nap, man. So yeah, like that was really interesting. But I couldn't help but think, you know, like, had it been someone else who looked completely different, you know, would I have reacted the same way? Honestly, yeah, because I don't care. If you're coming out of a cop car and you just got handcuffs off of your hand, I don't care who you are. I'm like, you did something to get in those handcuffs.
Usually anyone who approaches my car, I'm like, no, it's
First of all, you're bold. Like, you're mad bold.
Nah, you don't know what's inside the car. You don't know if it's just one Rissa or if it's like 4 deep. Like, you have no idea. People could be rolling out. You don't know.
That's what I'm saying. And
over here, they have a lot of people in between New York and New Jersey that, in certain areas, if you stop at a light, they'll come to try to clean your windows or sell you roses, or, you know, whatever. And they always approach your car. 9 times out of 10, depending upon, you know, what the situation is, I roll up my windows and I'm like, no.
Yo, 10 times out of 10, and I'm locking the doors. I apologize.
I know they're gonna hear that click. Oh, sorry.
I make sure I do it before they get too close, because I don't want to be. I'm like,
oh, sorry.
I was in the city not that long ago, and one guy came up and he's like, you know, can I clean your windows? And I was like, nah, man, I'm good. And my window was open a little bit, so like we could conversate. And he's like, and I looked at him, and I was like, nah, like, I'm not giving you any money. And he started dancing, and I was like, you know what? I got you.
He worked for it.
Yeah, he was just like, he did this little move, and I was like, okay, like,
you earned my trust. Now that's good networking and marketing right there. It's like, you gotta break him down and then go in for the.
Yeah, he was, you know, he wasn't, you know, whatever he was looking for, but he he wasn't like the guys sometimes that you see in another area in particular that I have passed through many times that are, you can tell that they're in a bad way and they're just looking to get through the day basically. But that's sad. But yeah. So there is microaggression, I think, toward that, but there is it's more of a survival thing, like you said. It's not necessarily a microaggression. It's more of a protection.
It's like I recognize the situation, I'm analyzing all the moving parts, and it adds up to it's a no for me.
And it's crazy because, and this is just a theory of mine. It's not founded in science.
I love Fresco's theories.
I just have I have a theory that encompasses two possible reasons why. Right. And it's more with regard to dark skin versus light skin.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those examples would be, in order to survive working outdoors, your skin would have to have more melanin in it. So people working in the field, people working harvest, crops.
My ignorant ass. I'm like, so there was a science to that type of slavery.
No, well, so I say that because I could see how it's not, maybe this isn't necessarily survival with this example, but I could see how it would be an adaptive sort of
stereotype.
What would the word? It is a stereotype, but it's something that's just passed on to the point where it becomes an archetype. When you see somebody who's dark-skinned, you immediately assume that they're a worker because of this ancestral archetype of people indoors are the kings inside castles, royalty, dukes, that kind of thing. They are not touched by the sun, so therefore their skin would be lighter. Just a thought. Now, the other one is survival. And this, you can kind of see this happen in New York or any sort of city where you're out after dark. If you can't see a person, if light doesn't reflect off of their skin as much as a lighter skinned person, that puts you in a perceived greater risk of danger because you can't respond to the situation quickly enough. For example, a panther in the wild can sneak up on its prey with basically not even being noticed up until the point of being up until the kill point. So I find these kind of examples interesting because I think that they are all archetypes that we don't necessarily need anymore, but we've never had the wherewithal to ever really process them.
And I think that's also doing the work in identifying where these microaggressions come from, like where they stemmed from. Like, you just schooled me right now. I'm like, damn, like there really is a science to it, but it's like, yeah, like I have my microaggressional jokes like to the white homies all the time. It's like, oh, you burn easy, like you can't be in the sun like that, like and it's
I do.
But
I do.
like, yes, but also with me, I'm light skinned too. I burn now too, and I'm like, oh, like, man. But it's very. Are you really?
I just get a little crispy. That's all.
Just crispy around the edges. Crispy around the edges. But it's. Like, I think the question is, after we identify stuff like this, it's like, first we're presented with this issue. We don't know what this issue is. And then stuff like Black Lives Matter happens, and, stuff like intersections and microaggressions and, subtle racism, stuff like that is starting to become more prominent and in the forefront of the conversation. And it's making even me realize, like, damn, I really thought I was seasoned in this. And I'm like, I have so much work to do. Like, I can be better. Like, and how can I do that? And I really like the point that you brought up, because we have to unpack where these stem from. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, do these serve us anymore? Or can we change the dialogue or the conversation or the approach to this in a way to where it's more constructive and we can change the conversation, create new definitions and terms, and just be progressive as like a people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel with this past year, everybody woke up, everyone got slapped awake, whether you liked it or not. So now there's this undeniable elephant in the room, not even an elephant, like it's the whole jungle. Like it's like boom, we're here, it's known, this is what's happening. So what are we gonna do about it? You know what I'm saying? It's like, so that's why like I appreciate these conversations. I appreciate these different perspectives because it's like, damn, like I didn't realize that's where that stemmed from. So now with that information, I can be intentional with my conversations and intentional with how I approach people who may not know or need help connecting the dots. You know what I'm saying? So like, good on you, man.
No, no, and if I may, like, again, this is just a thought. Like, I've taken the time to kind of ask why, and this is where my mind went. You know, I might have read something, I don't remember if it was research or not. So I only really want to introduce this as a possibility, another option to kind of, you know, maybe chew on. But by no means am I saying that this is accurate, because I already know that if somebody wanted to attack the point about royalty versus, you know, the people working out in the fields, you know, it doesn't stand true in Africa where there is black royalty and then there was also black slavery. Like, that doesn't stand true there. So my argument only really holds any sort of, you know, only holds a cup of water in more European sort of situations. You know, so it's not like, it's not a universal truth. I think it's just one example of many possibilities.
I appreciate that reminder. And I always emphasize to my listeners to listen to these conversations with an open heart and open mind, and to just know that these are just conversations based off of the experiences of different people who've experienced different walks of life. And if you guys have something to say, my listeners, viewers, put it in the comments. You find yourself yelling at the screen, put it in the comments. Like, we want to ignite these questions. We want to ignite, you know, motivation to speak up, and whatever your truth is, it's like, let's unpack that. Let's find that middle ground and like see what's up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But Steph, so can you give my listeners a little insight into what your childhood was like what you grew up around, like the culture and stuff that you're used to? Because you and I are very similar in the sense of experiencing two different types of cultures, or very, very extreme different cultures. Like, I went to a private school in like the valley, and then all of a sudden I went to a public school in the hood, and I was like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? So hearing your story, I resonated a lot. And like, yeah, could you tell our listeners a little bit of where you're from and all that stuff?
So growing up, I grew up in a more urban area. And in that area, it was diverse. But then my closest friend, I grew up in a very, very multicultural environment. I grew up with kids from all walks of life. You know, we grew up in the YMCA, where my mom ran the youth program, and we went there. I went to the Catholic school next door that was all pretty much Caucasian, and the projects were right behind it. And so I went to school with pretty much mostly Caucasian, not totally, not like up in the hills of New Jersey, but then we went to the YMCA, and, you know, the other half of the YMCA was where men were living. It was like a halfway house, I guess, where men were renting out rooms and living there.
Okay.
It was mostly men who had troubled pasts. So we grew up, we would put gloves on and collect crack vials off of the ground and turn them off of our plate.
Into what? I'm sorry?
Turn them into my mom so that she can get rid of them and dispose of them, because they would do crack and it would be in our playground. So we would put on gloves, and, you know, we made a game of it. The different color caps to the crack little vials were different points, and, you know, and I grew up obviously with a Caucasian background. My family was Italian. And then my neighbors were Dominican, my other neighbors were Black, and they were my sisters growing up. Like, they still are considered my sisters. And a block up was a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. And I remember we used to play on the corner. It was an intersection, but it wasn't a busy intersection. We would play there all the time. But we experienced so much microaggression, if you want to call it that. I would call it a little bit more than that. But when we were playing with all the kids from the neighborhood, and it wasn't just me and my brothers, if the ball went on someone's lawn, they would take it from us and threaten to call the police. If we had music on too loud and it was a certain type of music, they would say they were going to call the police on us. And I was the little Caucasian girl who would say, go call the fucking police, like, and run my mouth, because I thought it was just so wrong and so offensive, and I knew why they were doing it, and it was because we weren't just, you know, a group of white children playing in a neighborhood. We were in their neighborhood, so to say.
Right.
But aesthetically, I didn't fit in there. You know, I didn't fit in anywhere I went there. Not at the bodega, not at the corner store, not, you know, anywhere that I went. But in my soul, I fit in. Then when I was going into high school, I moved up to the hills of New Jersey, which was all white. I went up there and I was like, I'm going to die here. Like, I actually may die. There was, you know, I couldn't get Hot 97. I couldn't listen to my music. I remember moving up there and literally crying because they had one radio station and it was Delilah.
I would cry too, girl.
I don't know if you're not from the East Coast, but Delilah, I'm sure Fresco knows who she is. She's this like woman with the sweetest voice, but she tells these tragic stories and plays love songs. Like, that's all she plays.
Oh, Delilah.
That's all we could get. We didn't have like BT yet on the cable networks up there, and it was just a culture shock to me. And even though I fit in aesthetically there, I was so uncomfortable in my own.
Interesting. Yeah.
I was labeled the city girl, and I was like, I'm not from the city, I'm from New Jersey, but it's just not here. Like, the people who lived up there didn't know anything outside of that area unless they were from Bergen County or Passaic County and they moved up there. So they would be like, oh, she's a city girl. I mean, I was wearing baggy jeans and high top sneakers, and, you know, my hair was slicked back, and it was crazy because I didn't fit in. I fit in aesthetically, but in my soul, I was like, this place is crazy. They talk different. They walked, everything was different for me. I thought I was going to have to work on a farm. I thought I was going to be like, you know, I really had, I guess, a lot of microaggression.
You're like, where's the flavor?
But I really moved up there. I thought I was going to have to work on a farm. I remember when we were looking for houses up there, they closed the road down so cows can cross the street. And I lost my mind. I was a teenage girl, by the way, at the time. So you can imagine how much my parents were ruining my life by doing this move for me.
Oh, yeah, girl. I can
but I was like, I'm going to have to work on a farm. Like, I couldn't ride. There was no sidewalks. There was no street lights. There was nothing that I was used to. It was literally like you might as well have moved to the middle of the ocean.
Atlantis.
So,
like, it's like, what is this?
Yeah, it was foreign to me. Everything there was foreign. And, you know, I think people just expected me to fit in and adapt because I looked the same. But no, I still, at this point, I mean, I don't live up there anymore, but at this point, I still don't consider that my home. I never felt at home up there. I always felt like I didn't belong.
That's real. And how did your peers at that school, how did they receive you? Like, did they have their own, did they size you up already or just assume?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I was the
we
city
got another
girl.
one of us. Like,
Oh, I was definitely not like, hey, girl, oh my God. Like, it was like, they looked me up and down. They called me the city girl. One girl in particular that I remember her saying to me, oh, and I'm from a place called Passaic, and they would call it Passaic, and it would make me crazy And I'd be like,
Don't ask me to say.
I'm not Mexican, I'm Colombian, okay?
Yeah.
Like, if I get it right.
It's not to say it. And I remember this girl coming up to me, and she said to me, oh, I would never go there because I would get shot just for being white if I went there. And I was so pissed off when she said it to me. And I was like, no, you know what? You would actually get shot for being dumb and racist before you got shot for being white.
Yo, wait, right quick, Steph, or rather, Rissa, is Steph frozen for you?
She is frozen, yeah.
Oh, girl, you frozen.
Oh, how do I unfreeze?
Turn the video off and on again, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, possibly.
Am I still frozen?
No. Like in the middle of and Rissa, you're gonna have to cut this.
Is this me?
There we go.
You're back. All right, beautiful. Yes.
I was like, I'll hang up and call
you want
back.
me to say that again? Am I talking way too much?
No, not at all.
Am I making good points?
You're making phenomenal points. That's why I didn't want to interrupt. I was like, and I was already thinking in editing, I'll just slide over like a photo of her in the frozen part. And then like when it unfreezes again, I'll just like slide it back.
Because honestly, it was quite possibly the best photo it could have frozen on because you were like mid like
I'm like, that's the screenshot for the thumbnal right there.
That's the one. Don't you? I swear you get shot for coming to Pittsburgh just for being dumb and racist.
Honestly, that I called her Tracy the Racy online recently, but she was racist still to this day. And I still dislike her to this day. She's still ignorant as she was 20 years ago.
See, that's the part. It's just, it's when they don't change, or it's like, oh, all right.
She's very close-minded. Any way you slice it to her, it's like, I dated an Asian man once. He was half Asian. I'm not racist. And I was like, that's actually the most racist thing you can possibly say. But okay.
Like when you say, it's very interesting when people say that. It's like, oh, I got a black friend. It's fine. I have an Asian friend. It's totally fine. It's like, I don't get, do they speak for the entire like demographic? I don't understand. I didn't know they had ambassadors because like I'm offended and I'm not even Asian. So I don't know.
That's why I wanted to bring up with my grandma that I had those feelings about my own grandma, because if I, who love her this much, could have it, you being somebody who just knows somebody of a different background does not give you any sort of leg up on microaggressions, on internalized racism, or subconscious.
I think we all have them. Fresco was actually on the phone with me today when I had one.
I love how we're all like, oh, I had a moment of a microaggression.
Yo,
I love it.
17 microaggressions today.
I have been doing a lot of shopping. I just moved, so I've been doing a lot of shopping for my home. And so I've been going to these stores during the day on my days off, and there just so happens to be that every time I go to one of these stores, there happens to be a woman who's driving an SUV who also does not have work that day, who can't fucking drive. Every time, and they're usually driving a Range Rover, and I'm like, God, what the fuck?
That's how I am with Priuses. I'm like, you would be a Prius.
Damn, y'all are you carists. You're all carists.
Yeah, I am a carist. I don't care.
They're always in my fucking way, and it doesn't matter what store. A Home Sense, At Home, Target. Target is the worst, by the way.
I had to talk this girl off the ledge because she was really about to jump. I was like,
at Target? Oh wait,
no, I mean metaphorically. I didn't actually say that.
No, I know, I figured, but I was just like, what happened at Target? Like,
I was at Target 4 times this week, so you can imagine.
Oh, girl, yeah.
I was already set off.
It's been a week. No, Target will do, just like shopping in general. It's just, I don't know. I just don't like being too much in the world right now because everyone's just so on edge and just like, people are popping off and I'm like, I don't want to match that energy.
I was like, I just can't stand when they're like in my way, in my space. And he's like, but that's so selfish. I'm like, yeah, you're right though. But
No, hold up. Let me break that down because this was genuinely amazing, right? So off topic, but let's go.
Let's do it.
She's saying, yo, these people don't realize they're not paying attention to everyone else's needs. And then right after that, she's like, this bitch won't get out of my way.
Balance, balance, baby.
But it was where she was parked. She was literally stopped in the middle of the lane, taking up both sides, so I couldn't turn in. It's like, be aware of where you're at, and there's other people around you. Have some consideration. But then I was not considerate to the fact that she was just stopped there. I was like, look at him.
And so you didn't sit there and take the time to unpack why she might have stopped there.
Right.
Maybe like, no, I'm like, right. You'd be like, girl, can we
she just wasn't paying attention.
Oh no, you froze again, boo boo. Don't make any good points. There you go. You good. Now you good.
Okay.
Just keep like inflatable man.
Word. Yeah.
But no, back to like, okay, I wrote down crack pipes as a note on my like paper because like
Crack pipe.
I'm just like, okay,
Storm drain.
I'm just so, it's very, very interesting. Not interesting, because I was sitting there with my mouth open like, what? Like, I can't even relate. Like, your mother basically created like a neighborhood program to keep the playground clean.
So my mom has always been an advocate in the town that we grew up in. She worked in the school. She actually still works there in the school system. But she was the youth director at the YMCA, and I remember my mom. She did everything she could for the inner city kids and the unfortunate kids and the kids who were underprivileged. I remember her staying up night after night after night after working all day and then dealing with 3 rowdy ass kids, and writing grants to the state and trying to get funds to keep the youth program open, create a nursery school and a daycare there for the workers that couldn't, afford to send their children to private school and aftercare and things like that. And I'll never forget that she built a playground in the back of that school.
She built the playground?
Yep. And she was able to, I will never forget going there and having the ribbons being cut and the little ceremony. Wow. And I just thought it was so big, and it was just a little playground for us to play in. It was right on the highway, looking over the projects, but it was so huge because we didn't have anything, the youth program, she had us go on field trips. She, got the means. It was nonprofit. And she went from there to working at the YWCA and did the same thing there. And then she actually formed her own business. It was an alliance program, and she was a social worker. And I volunteered with her for many, many years. Obviously, when I was a kid, the whole summer I would volunteer with her. And we worked with everybody from the mayor down to the homeless people. I mean, the bums on the street and the people that were drug addicts with AIDS and HIV would come to her office, domestic violence, children who were raped. We dealt with all different people from all different walks of life. And, I was always just taught to love everyone. And so I would be walking down the street over there, and that area of the town was it wasn't a great area. And I was never afraid to walk down those streets. I also lived in a worse neighborhood, and I would walk from the train station at night to my house, and it was definitely not the greatest ideas I've ever had, but it was just my life. I never looked at myself as a walking target, where I probably was, but I was safe. It was home for me. But I'll never forget the day I was walking down the street, and one of our clients, he was a man who had HIV and was homeless. And I saw him on the street and I hugged him and was like, you know, hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you. And it was raining. And I remember he wanted to give me his umbrella. And I said, no. Like, you keep your umbrella. I'm fine. I have like one more block to go and then I'm good. Like, you keep it, whatever. And I remember like my friend being like, you just hugged that guy? And I'm like, yeah.
I'm that friend. Like, I'm just like, God, like, I'm so, So I grew up around so many different walks of life, so many different races, so many different cultures. You know, Fresco and I joke around all the time because I, you know, understand so much of the Latino culture. And, you know, and then my mom also married a Puerto Rican man. So, you know, there's so much. I'm like a little melting pot. Italian and Puerto Rican.
Sometimes I feel my Latino-ship challenged by you because it's already like not all the way there. And you be saying some shit sometimes and I'm just like, damn, girl, you really with it.
It's like,
it's
really hard.
I mean,
there's no doubt I was definitely Latina, but in this life, I'm blonde hair, blue eyes.
And that's why it's like it's fascinating. It's amazing because I can only imagine how many people make just the assumption that like you've lived one way, and then when we pull back the layers, it's like, damn, dude, like the versatility, like the type of stuff that you've seen and experienced, and like it's incredible. Like I can't relate at all. Like I was sitting here with my mouth open. I was like, she's really out there picking up crack pipes. Like I would have been like, oh my God, it's a crack pipe.
I've never touched a crack pipe. I've seen cocaine.
Yeah.
I've seen people do it. Like real coke addicts. Like,
no, they were, and this was, you're talking, this was in the 90s.
Right.
This was not now. So this was when it was crack. Like, it was cracking. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was such a Caucasian comment. It was cracking.
It was New Jack City out there, man.
Yes, it was literally that. But I also grew up watching those movies. I grew up watching New Jack City. I grew up watching Menace to Society, which was one of my favorite movies of all time.
My boyfriend has microaggressions against me because I did not grow up with those movies. So he's always questioning my black card. And I'm just like, first of all, you acted real brand new. Like I didn't grow up in the Valley.
Wow,
so like,
but can you say that though?
What?
Can you say it like that? You're acting really brand new? That's your term to use.
Why is it not my term to use?
Ooh.
See, it's super interesting though, because I also get those microaggressions from my family because, okay, peep this. I grew up in the Valley in Burbank before, I mean, I don't know what Burbank is now, but it was not versatile. Like it was like Armenians and white people, like, and like 2% black people. And even then it was like, I wouldn't even call that like African culture, like none at all. And so my dad, he's African-American. My mom is Mexican. I was raised Mexican. I had full access to the Mexican side of my family, full access to my culture. It was very ingrained, but my African-American side just was not there. Like, I don't know if like my dad just had trauma or like what it was, but it was never like, hey, you're African American. These are some of the things we practice in our culture. Like this is part of who you are. So I grew up with a lot of like identity crisis. Like I grew up with kids that like, I didn't look like them. They didn't look like me. Like it was very like, I experienced, I was bullied a lot. And to this day, I almost wonder, I was like, was I being bullied because of microaggressions that these kids didn't even fucking know they had? You know, so not having access to that really, like, it really, how can I put this? Like, my parents did everything that they could. Like, I wanted for nothing, but if there was something that I could change, I really, really wish that I had access to that, because it wasn't until that I was filling out high school applications and I looked up to my dad because it asked like, well, what's your ethnicity? Like, you know, are you Mexican? I was like, I know I'm Mexican. I know that. I hear that a lot with my mom. Like, I know that. But I know I'm something else too. And we've never really had this conversation. And he's like, just say that you're black. And I was like,
Do you think that in his mind, he was sort of trying to protect you?
Yes.
Because at the time, he didn't want you to be judged?
I think so, in his own way, yes. Knowing who my dad is, knowing the little bit that what he went through, he's a very private man. He didn't open up about a lot, but we would get bits and pieces of the type of childhood that we had, and it wasn't a great one.
Yeah.
And he would tell us stories about when he was in the army and the racism he experienced then. Like, he made a friend in the army with this white man, and they became very, very good friends. And he was like, I'll never forget the conversation we were having. We were in the bunker and he was crying, and he was like, and my dad was like, why are you crying? And he's like, because I won't be able to go back to my family and tell them how good of a person you are.
Oh, I just got chills.
And I'm like, okay. So that must be, so I took that as a reference of like, okay, you must have really experienced some shit. So like you, Steph, I concluded, like, I think that was his way of protecting us from what he experienced. Not without fault of any fault of his own, not realizing that it kind of hindered us in a way.
Right.
So experiencing these microaggressions with my Latina family, like my grandmother's first generation Mexican, there were a lot of I didn't get along with her growing up. There were a lot of microaggressions there. When I began to really lean into my African American side and really like adopt the culture, adopt the lingo, like really owning like, this is me. This is a part of me. Like, maybe I didn't grow up around it, but like I have the right to this. So I'm gonna like lean into this and learn this. Yeah. So yeah, my neck started rolling a little bit more. I started, snapping my fingers a little bit more, and my family would call me like, you weren't like, I would get talked about like, you weren't raised like this. Like, why are you talking like that all of a sudden? Like you talk real black now, and it's like, but I'm black. So like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm over here partaking in the culture. I'm hanging out now with friends who are putting me up on game and telling me like, you should watch these movies, or like, if I'm in the conversation or in the banter, obviously I'm going to pick up on it. You know what I'm saying? And I feel accepted. I found my people, like they love me. They're like my sister. And I'm like, mi hermana, ¿qué pasa? Like, it's like, so it's finding the beauty in the duality of that, like it, and not feeling ashamed for leaning into that, even though a part of myself, my family, didn't necessarily understand that, and still doesn't to this day. Because now my younger sister, she late bloomer, she was one of the ones who would make fun of me, like, right, like, why are your neck rolling so much? Now all of a sudden, especially with the Black Lives Matter stuff, now all of a sudden I'm hearing, and I don't want to hear, and I'm all like, ooh, Mariah, okay, Mariah, okay, like, like finding herself in that. So it's like, it's interesting that you brought that up, because it's like, yeah, it is mine. I do own that.
And that's the thing. Well, and yeah.
I'm so glad you broke that down, by the way. Not to interrupt, I'm just so happy that you did dive into that, because that's the whole reason for doing it. I was like,
I was like, I saw the poke. I was like, let's get froggy then. Like, let's do it.
So my bad, Steph, you were going to say something. I just want to...
Well, that's the thing with, raising Miles, who is mixed and not necessarily... Like, I want him to be able to identify with both sides and then choose which one makes him more comfortable and which one he connects with more.
Right.
So that he never has to question it, and he's always able to have those conversations with me and identify it. And my problem is trying to find a way to blend everything together without having to explain racism to him just yet. I try to start doing it, but he doesn't really grasp the whole hate part of it.
Right.
And that's connected to being hateful. Like, he thinks it's so bizarre. He thinks it's weird. He's like, what? People actually hate people because of that? That's so weird. So it's like, I don't yet want to, like, take that from him and kind of, like, expose him to that just yet, because I was never raised that way either. You know what I mean? Mom always was if I cut your arm open and I cut their arm open, it's the same color. So you all bleed red. That's what my mom would say.
Right.
And so that's how I raised my son. But again, because I wasn't mixed, he's mixed. I want him to be able to choose where he connects more and where he's able to identify more. Because, you know, he loves Lil Wayne right now. He's on this Lil Wayne.
Hey, go Miles.
Yeah. He's like, you know, he's like, Mom, can you put on Lil Wayne? Like, he's into the culture. He's into the culture. Ask Fresco. Fresco knows him. He loves Fresco, by the way. But
such a dope little kid.
He's so dragged out. Like, he loves the culture. He's for the culture. Like, he wants to wear the clothes and, you know, be that. And I'm fine with that. And I want him to be open to that. You know, I try to expose him to all different kinds of music. We don't listen to Kids Bop in the car. He doesn't know Disney songs.
I love it.
He
knows NWA.
Yeah, like he knows Biggie. If you ask him about Biggie, he will tell you that he got shot.
You're raising him right, girl. You raising him right.
So I can't hear you, Fresco.
Oh, I just said he needs to know. That's all.
You know, he's just. I mean, I grew up on that stuff. I grew up in a house that we listened to all kinds of music. We listened to, you know, the Beatles and Paul McCartney, to Stevie Wonder, to Lionel Richie, to Bon Jovi and Bryan Adams, to freestyle, to Mark Anthony, to, you know, Marvin Gaye. And then the first concert I ever went to was a hip hop concert at 10 years old. So, like, I'm not going to be driving around playing Kids Bop when I don't know any songs from Kids Bop.
You know what, though? What I love about how you're going about this, it's like you're planting seeds with him. Ooh, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can fully appreciate and understand how you don't want to necessarily be like, this is racism. You black, he's white. That's what it is. It's like you want to constructively kind of give him the tools to navigate through like everyday life and everyday conversation. So when he is presented with those inevitable situations, he'll be like, damn, that's what my mom was talking about. And I think that was missing for me. Like, it wasn't like with my mom, she's like, tú eres Latina, this is Celia Cruz, like, we're going to go to this quinceañera, like, you are Latina, that's what it is. I'm like, yes, my Spanish sucks, but I feel it. Yes. But I didn't get that with my African American side. Like, it wasn't like, you know, we listened to Sade, like we had like, you know, the music and stuff like that. But in terms of, you know, going to concerts or going to see things or, you know, have it pointed out, like, you know, this woman, you know, for an example, is like, this is Nina Simone. She's an advocate for the Black community because she's done this, and this. You know what I'm saying? She's not just a phenomenal singer, but she does this. My mom would do that with like, this is Celia Cruz. She's amazing. She was born here. She did this. She's Afro-Latina, blah, blah, blah. And if I would have known that Afro-Latina was a thing back then, I would have on the playground so fucking hard.
Oh my God. You would have dominated. Imagine that man really a thing until recently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people still find issue with it, which I think is interesting because like there's people who don't think that the two should be separated, which first of all, we shouldn't be separating one another in the first place. Yeah. But I think it's just really just for identifying certain characteristics about yourself, you know, and I think when you begin the process of trying to distinguish between one thing over the other, you're inadvertently going to start creating prejudices between the two.
Exactly.
You know, the minute you saw it light versus dark, like I wanted to jump back into this because my grandma says something to me today, and I've always known that she's always been a little racist, like a little bit.
I think that's like a first generation Latina thing.
All of our grandparents.
Cause same, I'm like, it's sprinkled, same.
she said this thing to me, and it's the kind of thing that you never really notice unless you're the person with the thing that they're talking about. So she said to
was that a dad?
I got a few of those. No, she was talking about because my dad's It's interesting because like my dad is mostly genetically black, but he does have Caucasian in him, which makes his skin lighter, even though everybody in the family is black, with the exception of him and my grandma on that side, who is also half black and half white. So it's interesting, but she said to me, we were talking about my birth, we were talking about the custody battle over me. This is the shit my grandma and I talk about. And she was like, y gracias a Dios que saliste con pelo bueno, no ese pelo malo.
Listen,
Oh my God.
And y'all speak Spanish, so for the listeners, the viewers, what I just said was, this is what she said. She's like, and thank God that you came out with the good hair, not the bad hair. Which anybody who's a part of the culture knows that bad hair is nappy hair. And so I never, like, if I never knew that, I never would have known that bad hair is nappy. Like, that never would have registered.
Can I interject? Because just so you know, I grew up with the good hair. This is my hair. It's straight, okay? And we would all, in our neighborhood, we would do each other's hair because that's what little girls do, I think. I mean, that's what we did. The thing that they have. But we would be like, I would be putting hair grease in their hair. We'd be braiding each other's hair. And I loved their hair. I wanted their hair. And they would want my hair. And I'd be like, no, I love your hair. It's so, I mean, my Dominican girls had the tightest curls. And I was like, oh my God, I want those curls. And then my African American girls, they had the hair that can be braided. Like, you would put my hair in a braid and then slip out. Like, and I was like, but I just want braids. Like, their hair to me was amazing. And so I find it funny, and well, not funny, but crazy how this is considered the good hair when I would look at their hair and think it was so beautiful. So it's such an opposite thing, because growing up, I would look at their hair and be like, God, I wish I had curls like her. Like, she has the most beautiful hair. But her whole life, she's conditioned to think she's got the bad hair.
And I feel like you also got, you know, the type of upbringing that you have is so beautiful, because your mother sounds like she did an excellent job in making sure that it was understood these are the things that make people beautiful, you know, like the fact that we are all different is what makes us beautiful, you know, like she didn't create that in that world, you know, the fact that she's like, she educated you guys or put it in, you know, made it a part of your life. It's like, we're going to keep this playground clean because we made it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
and this is
you
our playground. This is mine. This is that's dope.
And she never treated anyone different. Like, you would see, like I said, she would deal with everybody from, you know, doing bereavements for the cops when they would be in shootouts and things like that, to the homeless men on the street. I mean, you know, we've been at her job where domestic violence, like, people would come there to show up to come after their partners. You know, she's dealt with, you know,
she's like the auntie of the neighborhood.
Everyone knows her. Now she runs a school program still for underprivileged kids. And she drives 50, 60 minutes every day. She's done it for the last 20 something years. She will
not your mom, but she's my hero. Like, straight
she's amazing. She has done so much for, you know, the kids in the community and continues to, and it's really amazing. She, and again, was also an entrepreneur, and I didn't necessarily look at her like that either. I more like, I gotta go work with my mom again. Like, but you know, she really grew her office when she was a social worker. It was her and one secretary, and then she wound up opening 2 locations. And she did a lot of monumental moves, which to me at the time were, you know, I downplayed them. But now looking back, just little things like having that playground built for the youth program and doing those things were huge. Because if she didn't do it, who was going to?
Right.
Nobody was staying up all night. I mean, when we moved up to North Jersey, she, I used to call her Anne Frank. We lived in this beautiful house. I mean, when we moved up there, I thought we hit the lottery, because I actually had my own bedroom, and it was like bigger than the bathroom that we had there was the size of my bedroom, and I was like, I have my own room, and we have 2 floors and 2 bathrooms. Like, mommy hit the lottery. Like,
Mama made it.
like we made it, you know. And then they built this beautiful house. It was huge, and I was like, wow, they're really getting it, you know, like they're doing it. And she had all this space in this house. And in order to write these grants and things like that, she had a walk-in closet. Again, was the size of my bedroom growing up. And she, at the end of the closet, in the back of the closet, she put a desk with her computer, because if she was back there, no one would know she was there, and she could get these grants written.
Oh my God.
Stay up all night writing these grants in her little closet. So I would joke with her and be like, Annie Frank, are you coming out for dinner? Like, what are you doing? But without her doing that, you know, there were so many things that wouldn't have happened for so many, you know, families and kids that were less fortunate than we were.
Absolutely. I just wanted to highlight that, because it's you know, I always like to reflect of like, wow, my childhood was so fucking different. You know what I'm saying? Like it's I don't even know how I would react to that now as like a grown adult. You know what I'm saying? So it's incredible and phenomenal that you know, it's done in a way where you're made aware and not necessarily traumatized by the situation, because I know like that can absolutely be a thing. So, you know, and that helps you further the conversation and really help people like,
I think it helped me understand so much more.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I understand systemic racism because I've witnessed it. I've watched it. I grew up around it. I've seen racism because I've dealt with it on both sides. You know,
and it's crazy because here I am, an Afro-Latina woman who was not aware of race when I was growing up. Like, it wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't like, you know, like when I went to Venice, like it was all race jokes. Like it was just all racial jokes. Like, it's like, oh, hey, what's up, light bright? Like all that stuff. Like I was not educated on that until I went to a public school. You know what I'm saying? Actually, I started getting introduced to it more when I started going into high school. And then I started getting microaggressions projected onto me. Instead of calling me Larissa, they're like, oh, what's up, LaQuisha? And I'm like,
And that's weird too. That's something that's weird to me too, because I feel like that's when kids get ultra mean.
Yeah, well, because I think they're figuring out their identity.
Or are they just more free of the freedom? Are they more free with their expressions and things like that, and what they've learned at home and their upbringings? Because that's when kids turn into assholes, really. I mean, and they start saying things like that and doing those jokes, and then, you know, it goes into where, like, if the boys are teasing you and they're doing that, that's because they like you. And it's like, no, not really, but okay.
Yeah.
You know, you're saying this and it's making me think about that parallel again back to survival, because you mentioned that. And I agree. I mean, you know, I have my own story about how I started trying to rediscover my identity and adopting more of my African ancestry into my, you know, but that's neither here nor there. You know, maybe we'll get to that. But you also got to think at that point in time, kids are raging with hormones that they have not had before.
Right.
Like, they are at their most primitive state.
I wish I could go back to that.
You know what I'm saying? And you got to think, too, this is the period where they're trying to procreate and they don't know what that is. Right? So the reason why I bring this up, if I can say anything to break anyone else down, that makes me the alpha, and that makes me more likely to reproduce. Obviously, well, you know,
and those comments did come from males, so I appreciate your perspective. Like, a lot of it, I'm like, are you flirting right now? Because I'm offended.
Yeah, right, because the high school.
But we're also, as women, taught that if a boy's pulling your hair or teasing you, that they like you, and that's a whole other conversation. But
give me pussy.
Yeah, it's like, but he just pulled my hair. Like, the last time someone pulled my hair, it wasn't because they liked me. And then we get older and we realize it's because they do like you. But
and then it's like, pull harder. I was like, that's how I kept my shit.
Yeah, I like that. That's
totally. It's in a different energy now. But yeah. I know. like back then, it's interesting because we're taught to think like that behavior is okay, you know, and it's just like, but at the same time, like you said, raging hormones, they can't articulate shit yet. They're just like, I like you. Like,
it's and shit, word. And I'm not saying that's the whole picture, but I could see how that would play a factor into it. You know what I mean? Like it's like Lord of the Flies in this motherfucker. Like it's, how can I break everyone else down because I need to be at the top of the food chain, right? It's like, and it's
right. They want to be accepted. They want to be like, it's just the same as when they're bullying other kids because they want to be the cool guy, or you know, and not to say it's just guys, but you know, when they want to be bullied or they want to be the one that's, you know, doesn't look like.
And it's true because like after they say the joke, like they'll do a quick like, ha 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 ha, like,
look at
that validation.
Mm-hmm. No, but you know what? Women will do it too, right? Because there is, or rather little girls, I'm not going to generalize women, but also little girls, right? Like the cattiness, the sort of like the jumping from friend group to friend group. Like you want to be the only one who is getting the attention from the group of alpha males, if you will. You know, and I also understand I'm leaving out the LGBT community, but I don't know a goddamn thing about that. So I'm not.
We're all cisgender here, so we don't know.
Yeah, so not to disinclude you guys, but I can't really speak up.
It wasn't as prominent as it is now with LGBTQT, right? LGBT.
That was me on the last episode. I had to write it down, girl. I was like, I know this. I swear I know this. I was interviewing.
It's LGBTQT, right?
LGBTQ author, and I couldn't fucking say it.
Author?
Yeah, she was an author.
You have to edit that part out. I don't want to get.
No, you know what's
crazy?
LGBTQ plus.
Yes, plus.
Okay.
I've heard plus.
So when we were younger, that wasn't a thing.
It wasn't.
It was a thing, but it was very taboo. It was very. Actually, I don't even think it was taboo at that point. I think it was just non-existent.
It wasn't. I was just watching Sex and the City, and even as inclusive as like Sex and the City was made for the LGBTQ plus community, and even some of the stuff that they were saying, I was like, ooh, that didn't age well at all. It's like they'll say thing like, oh, when you think it's too early or you think it's too old to get married, here come the gays. I'm like, can we say the gays now? Like, I was like,
can you say the blacks? I don't know.
Anymore. Yeah, Kenya.
Right? Like, Kenya. She said Kenya.
Kenya.
It's so hard because you don't want to be it's so hard because I feel like we just tiptoe around so much now. We don't want to offend anyone, and we don't want to get crucified for identifying somebody in a way that's going to be seen as derogatory. You know, and it's like I don't even like to say my black friends anymore because I feel like it's inappropriate at this point in time. And even though I don't mean it that way, but I also think identifying as saying African American is also, you know, makes it more racist in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's hard because how do you say what's appropriate and what's not appropriate now? You know, and it's the same thing with gays and LGBTQ.
plus.
Yeah. You know, it's hard because you don't want to offend anybody, and I think it comes down to knowing your audience.
1000%.
I would also kind of tack onto that there's a sort of irony about touching on the topic of LGBTQ when, you know, I mean, not to kind of flex, I guess, in some sort of way, but like my best friend is gay, so I'm affiliated.
You're only able to flex if you take one more button down off that shirt.
So like I'm affiliated with it to that extent. But like it's ironic in a sense because who knows that we're having this conversation about microaggressions and how many we just said without necessarily realizing it. Again, to your point, Steph, and this is what made me think about this is, you know, even the way that we're talking about that, it could be misperceived, misconstrued, or taken offensively by some of the community. And that's where this becomes challenging because we're in a place in society now where each little subgroup, no matter how big or small you are in terms of sheer number, not in terms of importance, we're making people know, like, this is my name, this is what you call me, this is the vernacular that I want you to use.
Right.
And it's exhausting.
It is.
I'm
That's
gonna
where I say, like, what's the line? What determines the line between us being sarcastic and having these, innocent conversations that aren't meant in that type of way? What's the difference between those and microaggressions, and where's the line?
Right. And here's what's interesting, right? Us talking about the LGBTQ because we are all cis puts us in the same position as the Caucasian cis middle-aged male talking to everybody else.
Right.
Like that same ignorance with which we're trying to communicate something we know so little about is how they feel when we try and tell them, dude, Black Lives Matter. But doesn't all lives matter? Yeah, but right now, what we're trying to draw attention to are specifically the Black lives. But it's all lives, right? So like it's that dilemma, and we face this, we do the same thing that we're upset at other people for doing. And I think that puts us in a unique position to have to find a degree of humility. Like if somebody fucks up and they say sorry or they realize it in the moment, don't hold them that accountable.
Right.
Don't make them feel like dog shit for making a mistake about something that they didn't know. Now, if another person after getting educated does still act like an asshole and feels no remorse, let's go after those people.
And I think it's also the context too.
Excellent point.
The context behind it is when it's said to be derogatory and be intentionally aggressive is when I think it's more of a microaggression. Like we're talking about the LGBTQ. I don't want to fuck it up because
girl.
But you're trying. Side note.
Right, and I don't
exactly.
So it's like when we're talking about that, it's very innocent and it's very like curiosity connected. Where microaggression, I think is more like a backhanded compliment, like, oh, you better do your hair before you come to meet my clients and things like that. Like I think those are more of the microaggressions than people truly just not knowing enough about something and not being hateful towards it, but more needing to be educated, and open is the key word to being educated about it. Because
exactly.
I'm pretty sure all three of us would be open to being schooled and educated by that kind of community and all ears. I mean, I've been around that community and all walks of life in that community where, to be honest, it was overwhelming because I couldn't keep up because I didn't know all of the different layers of the identity. And it was so interesting to me and so it was amazing at the same time. And I was just like, wow, this is a whole new world that I had no idea about. Like, I love it here. I think I was actually falling in love with people who I should not have been falling in love with at one point. in the event that I was at. And I was just like, God, I love these people. Like everybody's just so free and so happy and so in tune. And I think the microaggression, again, is when there is hate connected to it and there is aggression connected to it, and it's done with bad intention rather than being open-minded and curious, so to say, on being and open to being educated on it. Right.
I have to ask though for the definition of microaggression, because as Fresco was saying, there's been a pile of microaggressions just having this conversation. You know what I'm saying? Knowing that we don't have ill intent behind it, is it still a microaggression by that definition?
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like where is the line that defines it?
Yeah, I think with microaggressions, that's why maybe it falls under the umbrella of racism, or they are different degrees of a response to a marginalized community. One or the other, but I do think that ultimately, when you're talking about a microaggression, it's more of a stereotype. Yeah, and it's also
Mhm.
you don't always necessarily realize that you're hurting that person.
Right.
And that's to your point, Steph, like, where do you draw the line? Because like, you know, the Anne Frank comment right to your mom at the time you were a kid. But for the Jewish people listening to this, I'm sure they're gonna be offended. Like, what do you realize that that's one of our people who was in a closet, like, fighting for their lives, kind of a thing?
Yes.
And it's
I
like,
read the book. It was one of my favorite books,
yeah, and so but that's an interesting thing because you also said that you came from a family that was incredibly sarcastic, right?
Right.
So it's like there are things that we would say within our own groups, within our own communities, that we might not necessarily say, or even maybe we'll say them, but not with the same sort of freedom and liberty. And it won't, because we know how it would be perceived. We know that it would be offensive. But like, should we feel bad about it when nobody's listening? Like my favorite part of the movie, not favorite, but a funny part of the movie, White Chicks, is when the two Wayans brothers get the white girls in the car to say nigga. Like, that is so mind blowing to me because I've literally been in that room while other people made white people say it. And I was just like,
and that is what I'm afraid of with
happens.
Miles.
Huh?
That is what I'm afraid of with Miles.
Yeah.
That is one of my biggest fears with him, and then
Like, he's part black, right? So does he have ownership over that term too? You know what I mean? Like, that's
another thing. Is he gonna have is he gonna be able to own that? Because he is, and I kind of very lightly explained that to him, because there was obviously songs that Lil Wayne has the word in it. And I was like, listen, when you're saying these songs, I know there's a lot of songs that you have that are saying that word, but you have to understand that word is a bad word, just like the F word and just like the B word. That word is a very bad word. I know that it's in all these songs and everybody's saying them, but you are not allowed to say that word. And he was just like, well, what does that mean, Mom? And so I kind of had to explain it to him. And I was just like, how I was like, you are, and that's where I had to tell him, you're half black also. And it's a bad word for people who are black and African American. And he was like, what? Like, he didn't understand that part of it. And then when I had to explain to him that he was half black, he was just like, wait, what? No, I'm just tan. Like, And so my whole thing is that when he is older and he starts adapting the culture and he does start to identify as either or, and he does, and let's say that he does identify more with his African American side because of the culture and his he's adopted the culture so much from such a young age. He's going to potentially put himself in danger if he's saying that word in a group of people who have darker complexion than him and don't know that he's mixed because he's not aesthetically mixed.
Right.
Doesn't look mixed.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. My dad, I can promise you, my dad is as white as Miles, skin-wise, and he says it freely to his heart's content. And nobody shot him or smacked him up yet. So
yeah, but it's different. It's different. It's a different time. It's a different day and time. I think it's just a very hypersensitive and rightfully so time that we're living in, where it's just that he's got to really, before he can start to say that word freely in a song or however he is going to utilize it, he's got to understand the impactfulness of that word and the power of that word and what's appropriate and what's not, because he doesn't know.
Right.
He's 7. He's not, he's not 16 or 13.
Right.
He's like he's 16, but
yeah,
he talks like he's 37.
But at the end of the day, he's in first grade. He's not even 7. He's actually 6, but he's about to be 7. He's in first grade. So how do I have that conversation with a first grader who is just completely naive to all of this, because I choose to keep it that way, because I don't necessarily want to force that idea of racism down his throat.
Right.
You know? I try to teach him about Black history. Right now it's Black History Month. I'm trying to teach him about Black History Month, and instead of teaching him that this is Black History Month, I'm instead trying to teach him about the amazing, you know, African American pioneers, and, you know, the people who I learned about, and, you know, George Washington Carver and Rosa Parks, and, you know, Martin Luther King, because he was talking to me about Martin Luther King's birthday. And, you know, I'm trying to teach him about all these great people rather than focus on the fact that it's Black History Month. I don't want him to see that as a, you know, like such a narrow box. It shouldn't just be, it should be a total thing that they're just
1 month at a time.
It's like bite size. It's like you're feeding it. There's a lot of complexities and a lot of layers to our history, to African American history, that no 7-year-old is going to be able to palletize that, obviously. But what I think is a brilliant approach, you know, I'm not a kid, but I'm just thinking like, damn, I would have appreciated this approach, I think, is that you're focusing on the positive parts of it, so that when it comes down to when he does make that connection, he already has that foundation of like that sucks that happened, but damn, she taught me about all the people that persevered, and like, and he'll hopefully begin to be proud, like, you know, like damn, like my people really did that. And then dealing with the complexities of, you know, being in those crowds where they may not know him, and, you know, might be slip of the tongue, and that's something I think that, you know, a lot of people of color, like even myself, like being light skinned, I have to understand and know my surroundings. Like, you know, there's the microaggression of like, I gotta put my white girl voice on, you know, because I'm like,
switch.
Codes, yep.
That's a whole conversation right there.
Straight up. Like it's crazy. Like when I work in corporate offices, and sometimes I only have a phone relationship with a lot of like reps and clients and stuff like that, so they never see a face. And it's really funny because from time to time I'll get like a visual reaction when people see me, and they're like, "Oh, you're Larissa," and I'm like, my hair's all curly and big. I'm like, big. Like,
right? It's crazy. It's so crazy.
My favorite is and I would imagine Puerto Ricans and Dominicans are both going to hate that I say this, but when I meet Puerto Ricans, they immediately think that I'm Dominican. And when I meet Dominicans, they immediately think that I'm Puerto Rican. And I look at both of them and I'm like, you motherfuckers look the same. Like, what the fuck? Like,
well, that's like the same, like my friend's Japanese American, and sorry, but I'm like, I can't tell the Chinese, Japanese, and she gave me the, like, this is how you tell the difference. It's in the facial features and blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's how we do it too.
but like, in the wrong hands, that would be considered racist, right?
Right.
With the ill intent. With the ill intent, like I'm going about it as like, I want to learn. I want to learn this so I can be respectful toward these people. And so I can learn their culture. That's my intention. But if I'm doing it to be like, I want to make sure that I never associate with that group of people because that's what they are, help me identify that, then like, that's straight up racist, I feel.
Straight up. No,
that's how I feel about Spanish though. Like me and Fresco have had full conversations in Spanish. But if somebody asks me, you speak Spanish? And I'm like, no, just a little bit, because, and I can speak it pretty much, but my own thing is I feel that I would never say, I speak it fluently, or I can speak Spanish. I'm never the one that's like out there like that, because I think it's disrespectful to the language, because I don't know it like that. And for me to come out there and say, I could speak Spanish, or, you know, try to get in where I fit in when it's not appropriate, you know, I think it's a disrespect to the language and to the culture, because it's such a beautiful language and culture. I have no right to try and own that.
See, you know, I'm noticing some hypocrisy on my own end, because I would argue that you speak Spanish possibly better than me, and I'm the first person to put on a resume that I speak that shit fluently. So,
I
and
don't.
I know I have the blood in me, but still, like every time I write fluent, I do like ask myself, I'm like, yo, I better be the only Spanish speaking motherfucker in there. They better not quiz me because
Listen, if Alec Baldwin's wife can be like, I'm Latina because I'm fluent, like we can all be Mexican then, right? No, yeah, but like that's a whole microaggression too, right there. But it's very much like, I mean, learning another language, like if you know it fluently, own it, girl. Like I don't think, me personally, that's my personal opinion, I don't think it's appropriating. I think it's like I'm teaching myself stuff so that I can connect with you.
Yeah. And that's when I utilize it. I know my surroundings, I know my audience, and I know when to utilize it. You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes I go into, because I love Spanish food. Like, I probably eat it more.
It's a beautiful language.
Oh, it is beautiful. I love the culture. I just, again, grew up in it, love it. Like I'm Italian and love Dominican spaghetti. Figure that out. One of my favorites. But I just, whenever I go somewhere and I see somebody who is Latino uncomfortable having a conversation with me, is when I'll speak back to them in Spanish so that they understand that, like, nah, like,
absolutely.
Don't feel intimidated by the fact that I'm speaking English. I can speak Spanish if it's easier for you, for us to connect. Like, let's do that. We can take it there.
See,
but
the beauty of
Spanish, just like you speak English, if your English isn't, my Spanish isn't that good, so it's the same. But at least I'm able to try and connect with you in a more comfortable way for you.
And it's a beautiful way to break the barriers. Like you said, I do the same thing. I'm like, I'm not fluent by any means. Like I'm conversational. I can get what I need to say out, but I try not to, advertise myself as like, as soon as I say like, don't respond like, to like fully engage, like, my bad, bro. But I do find myself, if I really want to communicate, if I really want to show like it's okay, like if this is a safe space, like, all right, let me tap into the archives and like, show him that I'm
the archives.
Okay, like,
yo, but to put this into a gray area, right? There are Latinos that I have met that would be offended by people talking to them in Spanish for the sheer and simple fact, not who's speaking it, but because they're trying so hard to speak English that when you switch it up on them, it's like,
they're like, no, I want to speak English.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's interesting.
Everything's just a double-edged sword.
But that's what it is, and that's really, and I'm so glad you said that, because like that's really everything that comes out of my mouth is meant to convey that exact point, that everything is in a gray area, and that ultimately, and you elaborated on that beautifully by saying that it really is the intention, and that's something that you always make perfectly clear in any conversation that we've had. Intention is at the center of what makes something good or bad. Somebody may receive it poorly, but your intention could have been right, and it's on them whether they're going to digest it that way, process it that way, what have you. But you always make a point to establish that intention should be what we're focusing on, and not all your bullshit.
Yep. Because it can get so clouded by, look at everything going on with the media and everybody, coming out of the woodwork with their racism and aggression. Let's not even call them microaggressions. They felt that it was a safe space to kind of come out of the woodwork with those. And everybody's hypersensitive to so many things right now. Even with the LGBTQ community.
Plus.
Even with that community, there's so much more that we need to be educated on before we can really understand it. But there's layers and layers and layers and layers to it. And everything we say offends somebody at some capacity.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But if we're saying something with good intention and we do wind up hurting somebody and they call us out on it, it's simple enough to hopefully say, my bad, I really didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry that you took it that way. But what's a better way for me to approach that or say that or deliver that? Because that's not what my intention was. And then with that person where you are on the playing field. But I also think there's a lot of people who won't communicate the offensiveness of what you say, or I like to say it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah, straight up.
You know what I mean, I can tell you go fuck yourself in the nicest way possible, but you're gonna.
Tone is everything. There was this video that went viral a couple years ago about this woman. She was like, I'm going to show you how one word can have like 5 different meanings, and I'm going to use the word bitch. And she'd be like, what's up, bitch? Or like, that bitch. Or like, bitch. Like, it all means something else. And I tell everyone, I'm like, communication is not just with words. It's with body language. It's with eye contact. It's with your delivery. It's with your word choice. It's like periods, pauses,
how you say it,
all of it. All of it matters. And tone is huge because it's like you can say something and it's like, I know you said it. I know you said this, but it sounds like you meant it this way. And I want to like,
and that's the email and text message gets so messed up. And I like
that LOL makes a big difference.
and I use exclamations and emojis so that they know where I'm at, because I'm like, sometimes I read I read Fresco some messages and we laugh about them, but a lot of times I choose my words wisely in text and email because I know the point I want to get across, and I'm hoping that it gets delivered the way I want it to, because I'm intentional with then that's when I get intentional with specific words and how I word something.
Absolutely. It's all planting seeds.
I read them some of my messages.
I love her messages. If you ever have the privilege
you want to be entertained,
any of Steph's text messages, DMs, letters that have been written, they're entertaining.
Hopefully one day I will be graced. But it's like emojis is a language. GIFs are now a language.
GIFs are my thing. GIFs, if you want to talk to me, have a GIF war with me. I am so into it. But again, I need somebody with a good sense of humor to have those GIF wars with. But if you have somebody dry on the other end, you're just like,
word, why'd you send me Olaf? Yeah, it's winter.
Like,
the fuck?
But that goes into like I feel that it like it's when you're asking like what's the difference, like what's the line between sarcasm, racism, and microaggression, and it's all intention. It's all about knowing who you're talking to. Like when my friend said the whole hair comment, I'm like, I know that's not who you are, and I know that's not how you meant it, so I'm not going to make a big deal about it, because like right now I'm not going to make a big deal about it because first I got to digest that, but also like I know you, so I'm not going to like fully hold it against you like that. And that's how you're able to have sarcastic jokes and playful banter with people, because even though we're saying some derogatory shit, I know you're not this person. It's just funny. But this is a safe space for us to have this. Like, I can't necessarily have these sarcastic jokes with everyone. Like, there's a level of intelligence. There's a level of, like, just knowing, like, that you need to have in order to have that sarcastic banter. So someone might try to come off sarcastic, and it's like, that was offensive as shit, and you need to work on your delivery. Like, absolutely. It's comedic timing, it's tone, it's a skill. And like, if you grow up in a family that, you had that, like, you got to develop that skill early on. But I definitely have come across people, I'm like,
because ageism is a thing, right? Making fun of old people. But I realized, so like I said, today was meant for this conversation. So my grandma came over, right? And she's helping, and I left her upstairs for like literally 30 minutes. Like, and this woman is crazy because she's 70, I think, 2, right? And what makes her so amazing is she doesn't act like it. She can do things that most 72-year-olds can't. Like, she'll climb on top of counters. She does it. She climbs on this roof of her house and does all the scooping of the leaves and shit. Like, she does that herself.
That's
like
amazing.
Crazy, right? So today, and this is actually is a little sad, like we had a little moment, but she's upstairs and she's moving this big dresser, which she's moved dressers before. She's done all types of shit, right? This particular time, the dresser got caught on something, falls over, and she's calling me. I didn't hear her, right? She's calling me, panicking, and she's like, Joey, you know, whatever. And I come upstairs finally after realizing that there was like a panic situation. She's holding the dresser, freaking out, tears coming out of her eyes. She's so upset. And I help her to move it and whatever. And it was this moment of her kind of realizing her mortality, you know, like realizing, oh shit, maybe like there's some things I might want to ask for help for, kind of a thing. And honestly, it could have happened to anybody. She's also like barely 5 feet tall. So like her moving a big ass dresser is like, girl. So what winds up happening is she's panicking, she's upset, but our relationship is literally to just make fun of one another. So I literally just went off and started making old people jokes at her, and her face went from straight up tears to like frustration to laughter. And here's what the frustration was. She's frustrated because she wanted to feel that pain in that moment. She felt so bad, and it made her feel guilty to laugh about something. You know, to just like, haha, that's hilarious. But I bring that up because that was a prime example of a moment where I did know I could joke about her age. I could joke about it just to add some light to how poorly she felt about her age in that moment. You know, like, you can't do that with everybody.
No, you cannot.
With every old person.
Tried it with my own mom, and she went off. I was like, oh, not gonna do old people.
If you call me old, you're gonna have a problem. Okay?
I was like, happy birthday, old lady. She's like, you do not. I was like, my bad.
Miles is trained now to lie about my age. I tell him, don't say the F word. Whatever you do not. If anyone asks you how old I am, you do not say the F word. And the other day, he said something, and I said, how old am I? And he said it, and he goes, sorry, I said the F word. But also, we were in Florida recently, and we were there, and my uncle was there, one of my uncles. And when I tell you that it is a rip sesh, like, we just literally will sit across the table from each other, and it's like, oh, your head is so big, blah, 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 blah. Like, you would think it was like,
that's part of the culture.
That's what we do. You know what I mean? He's like, Miles, when them teeth coming in, blah, 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 blah. And like, literally, like, he tormented my son so much in 2 days that by the third day, my son was like, I don't even want to talk to him. Like, Miles was so quiet because he was just like, I'm tired. He wore Miles out. Like,
aww.
I'm sitting there thinking, like, if other people heard how we talk to each other and the shit that we're saying to each other right now, they would literally fall to the ground. Like, for instance, my stepfather, when he sees me, he says to me, what's up, fat girl? That's how he greets me. That's how he greets me. He's not calling me fat. He's not telling me, you know, he's not saying it in a mean and insensitive way. It's weird because he's saying it as a term of endearment.
Well, what about big head? Remember, everybody was saying, "What's that big head?" Like,
yeah, that was the flirt. If you got caught big head, it's like, ooh.
Like, will be offended. She's like, "How can you let him say that to you?" And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, that's so rude. It's so messed up. It's fucked up that he calls you that. Like, why do you let him? And I'm like, I don't care. Like, he's not saying it's, you know, when I have to worry
about in the Latina culture when my mom would be like, she would call me go to that. But it was like,
so it's like, what's up, fat girl? You know, like, what, you know, he says it to me.
Me go to Zita. And I'd be like,
Like, it's terms of endearment, you know? But if other people heard it, they'd be like, oh my God, he's calling me fat,
right?
You know, how do you, you know? And I'm just like, I'm going to be worried when he doesn't call me that anymore, because that means that he thinks I am fat and he's not saying it's my face anymore.
Word.
You know what I mean? But like, that's how he greets me. And I call him fat boy and I say, what's up, big head? Like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, there's so many microaggressions that we use on each other. Like, that's why I say, where's the border between sarcasm and microaggression? Because if you sit at a table with my family, you're going to be on the floor dead from microaggressions.
That sounds like macroaggressions.
But really, they just, you know, we just go off on each other. And it's like, you cannot have one flaw. And we learned at a young age, we had to learn to embrace our flaws real quick. Because every flaw that you had, they were calling you out on it. And they were like, oh, look at you with your hair looking like you got electrocuted. Like, he'll talk to my aunt and be like, oh, did you get taken care of that mustache yet? And then we're busting on him because he's bald. And we're like, where'd the rest of your hair go? Exactly. Like, did you give it to her for her mustache? You know, so it's like we all go in this like circle. And
same thing. Like, my cousin will be like, oh, your like mustache is getting kind of thick. Will be like, thicker than your beard. Like,
exactly.
So and it's like, and it's almost like an initiation sometimes when you're meeting a group of people. Like, they'll throw a dig at you, and then that's the test. And it's like,
my aunt brought a man over the house one day who had clear nail polish on. It was over for him. They were like, oh, what's your man's want to get pedicure with you? Blah, blah,
blah.
Like,
you know what house he was walking in?
Yeah. And they're like, oh, he has an earring. Like, did you let him borrow your shorts too before he came over here? Like, he put, you know, like, I mean, you cannot come into my family. You have to have thick skin to come and introduce
You know what, though? That's another set of interesting thoughts, right? Is like, is bullying not productive? You know, like, if you are capable of standing in front of somebody tall while they're berating you and standing in your truth, standing in your own strength,
right?
I feel like to me that's
theory.
adaptive.
The 8 Mile theory.
Yeah,
you're owning your own flaws. You're owning it. Like, it's amazing listening to this conversation because it makes me think like, okay, let's go back to where microaggressions stem from. Like, when I'm thinking about you talking about the dirty dozens, we're just ragging on each other. I'm thinking about going all the way back to slavery, where the dirty dozens was invented as a way for slaves to take back a little bit of what was taken from them. So they began to own those very flaws, and that evolved into hip hop. That evolved into rap battling and stuff like that. Because when you listen to those lyrics, when those rap battles, that's exactly what's happening. Like, I'm coming at you. Yeah. So it's like this thing that started off very terribly. That, you know, Black people have a great way of taking that, even people of color in general, like just watching everyone just own that and turn it into their own culture and watch it evolve. And how people who were not brought up around that or don't understand that see is like, oh my God, like, how do you even like take like, what do you mean? Like, it's I'm totally fine with it. Yeah, I do have a mustache.
Yeah,
like, it's like I'm Latina. It comes with the package.
Yeah, and when somebody comes into my family, like, they want to see your reaction.
Yes,
they want to see if you can roll with the punches, because they don't want to offend you necessarily and hurt your feelings and, you know, be rude to you. They don't want to bully you. They want you to come back, and they want you to be like, you don't even know me. Why are you talking to me that way with your big old head? You know what I mean? They want you to have that banter back and forth with them, because then that's you being welcome in, and you can fit in, and you can come into this family because you can take those jokes, and you're not going to be crying in the corner on the car ride home like, I'm never going to your fucking family's house again. Like, I've had men who I've introduced to, I very, very seldom have brought men to meet my family, but the very few that I have, I've had some guys be like, I'm never going to your family's house again.
I'm sure.
You can joke, oh, well, we are not going to make it because I got jokes for days about you, and they were right about some of the things that, you know, but, you know, it's like they want you to, they don't want to offend you. They're not trying to be, you know, they're assholes because who does that to people? But, you know, in a sense, it's them welcoming you. It's them saying, on in
Right.
and see how you react. And if you can hold your own, then they're like, all right, cool. Like,
Exactly.
he's got this.
Like
He can take care of my needs.
Right? It's an initiation.
Yeah, pretty
Can
much.
you hold your own?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, we are going in on a hearty 2 hours.
Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not done.
I'm not done. Well, say what you gotta say, man.
No, I'm playing.
Okay, he's done now. I was like, all right then. You
my
know,
teeth
Froggy with your shirt, with your Tropicana shirt.
I know. Look at him. What kind of background is that? Is that like a faux background you guys?
See, this is how the
why
fan
you gotta
club starts,
snitch on
man.
me, yo? Let me have my background. I set my light to pretend like the
I'm
light from the
into
window
it.
in my background was actually coming
I
from
know.
the
I'm like,
little
where
window.
are you that it's light out right now? Hello.
I'm in Cali. You
Like a
ain't
whole
heard?
catfish situation. This is how the fan club starts, Fresco.
I'm telling you, they think I live in a whole penthouse and I be living in an attic.
I'm gonna get another one in the comments talking about how pretty your eyes is and shit.
I'll be like,
Look at him.
No, but guys, in all honesty, I really want to thank you so much, Fresco. Again, Steph, thank you so much for stopping by, helping me to facilitate this very difficult and necessary conversation in such a constructive way. Both of you, your vulnerability is always appreciated. I'm always so grateful to get to tap into the side of you guys, and hopefully this ignites some fires, some thoughts, some alternative perspectives to people listening.
get angry, get uncomfortable, you know.
Mad. Let us know you mad.
Oh, man, come on, it's fine. And just a special shout out to the fan club. Shout out Jennifer. She is the one who brought this idea to the
She
table.
did.
So shout out Jennifer. Appreciate
Jennifer,
you.
thank you so much for holding us accountable to these conversations and speaking up and asking for this, and being very specific about what you wanted to hear. That was dope.
Actually, there's one last thing. The reason for her asking, because I remember her saying this in the comments, was that she's Lebanese, and within the Arab community, the Lebanese tend to be a lot lighter skinned because they have French heritage. So she had told us about this experience that she had with a microaggression where her friends weren't allowed into a club or something to that effect. Actually, that might have been Steph's story that she might have told me.
I think that was my story.
I
wasn't let into a club in Mexico because I looked too Afro. Too Afro, not enough Latina.
Damn.
I've been in the same situation where I've been in clubs where they told that I had two friends with me they were both African American. They both had the same exact shorts on, actually. One had dreads and one didn't, and they would not let the man with dreads into the club.
Wow, yeah.
They had the same exact shorts on.
That's crazy.
So I bring Jennifer up because I just think it's fascinating that it's not just the Black community, it's not just the Spanish community, it's not even the Asian community. It is also, you've got the Arabic community, you have just any walk of life that even within their own populations, they have their own prejudices within one another. You know, even with the Latino community, you have darker skinned Latinos in the same country and they're treated differently than the lighter skinned Latinos. So it's like it exists all over the place.
I've seen more microaggression within the same races than I have with other races.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
I've seen it, I've seen it in the African American community when I was in down south. I've heard it from many African American people towards their own race, and I always found that to be a little disturbing. And also, I've seen it. I've seen it.
What about white people with Italians, the Irish, the Jews?
It's always like, where is that part where you're not good enough because you're not this, and it's the labels and the stereotypes, and unfortunately, we all have stereotypes, and there is a reason for those stereotypes. There's people who define those stereotypes and help create those stereotypes. You have the whole white trash people. I've seen them. I've seen it firsthand. I've been around it, and it's not who I want to be identified with. So, you know, is that where the microaggressions come in? And then they start to develop from there?
Could be.
A lot to unpack. It's a lot to unpack, but I'm hoping, well, I know that these types of conversations are going to plant seeds. You know, like, I'm not looking to change anyone's minds with these conversations. I'm not looking to shame anyone, to say that the way that you think and live your life is wrong. But I'm hoping that with these Culture Fuzz conversations, it offers alternate perspective, that you make educated guesses, or you have all of the information at hand so you can make an educated decision about your life and what it is that you want to do, and that you can connect with people from all walks of life, regardless of your experience, regardless of their experience. And this conversation right here is proof of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've heard our backstories, you know the difference in our backgrounds, and yet we're still able to come at a round table and have a very constructive, beautiful conversation, because the very things that make us different are the very things that connect us, and that's what Culture Fuzz is about.
Right.
So it's like,
it's such a beautiful thing. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
absolutely.
you, y'all. Thank the listeners. Shout out the listeners for even, if y'all made it to the end, good on you, because we talk about some really
did a lot of
challenging. It is.
It's very interesting. Like, I'm ever since I've been putting these up on YouTube, and I think now that there's like a space for people to like comment and actually be a part, I'm starting to see people kind of trickle in. Like when Jennifer commented on our post last time, like, I was like, oh my goodness, like, people are actually like listening to this. So it's showing me that there is a corner for this. There is a niche for this, and you know, just people want to connect, and I just think they just don't know how. And you know, like, it's if I can help give a tool, offer a tool, connect people to someone who can provide a tool, provide an alternate perspective, then I've done my job. I've done my part. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever happens to whatever comes from whatever, what's the word I'm looking for, comes to fruition from these conversations for you, the listeners, myself, it's beyond me. I truly believe this was supposed to happen. I truly believe Jennifer popped in at the right time. It's not a coincidence. I had my experience today with like the gentleman who wanted a ride. You had your experience today with your grandmother. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's all perfect alignment. And I want to thank you guys again. Really quick though, Steph, Fresco, let them know where they can find you guys.
Oh, word up. Yeah, so Fresco, you can find me on Instagram at WakeUpFresco. I got not one, but two websites. That's FrescoArts.team.com and photographybyfresco.com. I'm a photographer, so hit me up for all your events and portraits. I got you.
And he's super talented and amazing.
Yeah, he is. And we're not just, I feel like me and Steph are very honest people. This man's very talented.
Thank you. Appreciate it. If this isn't a photographer shirt, I don't know what it is from like the
That is like a straight up photographer shirt.
It is, yeah, I know.
I feel like you should be walking around with a camera around your neck. Like,
do you have your dad's sandals on?
My dad's I'll tell you, you tell me, is this a dad sandal?
Close. That's like the, I was gonna say that's like the homie dad sandal. That's like the Pops sandal.
Oh yeah, no, I got the Pop sandals on.
That's the chancla.
You know, I got a little band where I pop and I slide. You know what I mean? So, yeah, go on, Steph. Come on, let me open up the floor for Steph right now. Talk about it, baby.
So you can reach me on Instagram. I am Steph_Gem, GEM, and also under Vice Girls Steph.
Hey, and you guys already know where you can find me, Rissa SoFar, on all social media platforms. Also, don't forget to follow Culture Fuzz on Twitter. And that's it for today's episode. You guys, make sure you keep the conversation going. Leave your comments, tag us, add us, yell at us. We want it all. Bring it on, baby. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of the week. Mwah. I'll see you guys later.
And never forget, guys, be the fuzz.
Embody the fuzz. Be the fuzz. Be the gray area.
Be fuzzy.
Be the chaos.
Be the
disturbance.
Fuzzy.
I love it. I love it.
Unity, that's a unity.